So, before we start chapter 16, we will revisit as to why we are reading this great scripture of ours and what is it that we hope to gain from this. Now, Bhagwad Gita is the philosophical kernel of Mahabharata, and it is the most famous and best known texts in the world. It consists of 700 verses of the 1 lakh verses of Mahabharata. So Mahabharata has 1 lakh verses, and Bhagavad Gita, the philosophical kernel of Mahabharata, has 700 verses. Now, this is written conservatively between the 5th to the 2nd century BC. And I don't really want to go into the dating of the text because it can be at times controversial, and let's forget that. That's not the point. What the point is that this conversation between Lord Krishna, who was an avatar or the god incarnate, and Arjuna, the mighty Kshatriya warrior, this is the conversation on the eve of, or actually on the battlefield, not the eve, on the battlefield, where Arjun has thrown down his arms and he refuses to fight the battle for which he'd been preparing for 13 long years. So the philosophy which the God brings out before us is actually, it's a universal philosophy, and it applies to all of us across the board, the entire humankind. The setting, of course, in the battlefield is extremely important because as we function in the world, we are continuously facing the warring sides of our personality, the positive and the negative within us. So if I'm getting late and I'm standing in a queue, and my tendency is to jump the queue. That is my negative side. The good side of me is telling me that no, just continue. Maybe ask the person ahead of you that please allow me to go, as I'm going to miss my flight or whatever it is. So this warring, or the positive and the negative sides of ours, they are continuously in conflict in any choice that we make. So, in the same body, we are an interesting combination of the best, the noblest qualities, and horrible, terrible qualities. The amazing part is how they coexist in the same person, the divine and the devil. And interestingly, the chapter that we are going to start today, chapter 16, is going to address precisely the divinity in us and the evil or the devil in us. So, that aside, back to the why we are reading the text. So, Bhagavad Gita tells us to understand our positives, our negatives, try to remove the negatives by working on the positives and refining them. In short, it is telling us how to live life happily, completely, and blissfully by identifying the best in us and supporting it, working on it, letting it grow, bringing it out, and letting others, in our interaction with the world, showcasing these good qualities of ours. Now, when we talk about the two sides, the positive and the negative, the question of choice is very, very important. That is one thing which the humans have, which the rest of the creation does not have. So the humans are the ones who, at any given point of time, have the choice to do something or not to do something. So I have the choice to attend the session or not to attend it. Choice to attend, compete in a flower show or not to do it. Right? So go to a mall instead. So the choice that we choose is what is to be used for building our personality. So the choice should reflect that how we are human beings, and as human beings, we are different from animals. We are not pre-programmed that if it is the spring season, I'll be out trying to flower and bloom. If it is the autumn, I will shed my leaves. We are not like that. So that brings us, okay, so this is the change difference between humans and animal and the rest of the creation. What is our purpose in life? So when we live, what is it that we should do? It is life, we know, and we all have the same experiences. It's a combination of good, the pairs of opposites that we talk, the good, the bad, the right, the wrong, honor, dishonor, heat, cold. So even in when we are interacting with the environment, all these pairs of opposites are continuously presenting themselves before us. And this is what becomes challenging at some point of time for us. And when we feel disheartened or we are overwhelmed, so Bhagavad Gita always, if you come back to the text, will tell you how to handle these challenges. And instead of simply blaming the environment, the boss, the spouse, the family, it tells us to work on ourselves. So, to work on ourselves, we need to understand ourselves. It's just like understanding an equipment that we have purchased, a vehicle that we have purchased. So, what are we? What are we made of? What is my nature? What is it that irritates me? What is it that makes me happy? What is that, motivates me? So, once we understand ourselves, then we can face the world and its challenges. And Bhagavad Gita, the most significant message, in my opinion, which it presents before us is that we are here not to change the world. We are here to change ourselves. Once we do that, everything around us changes. So, Bhagavad Gita introduces us to ourselves and tells us how to work on ourselves, to improve ourselves. So it starts with the Bhagavad Gita starts with the word dharm and ends with mam. So the entire text, the 700 verses, are encapsulated between my dharma. That is what it translates to. Now, dharma is something that we need to understand. It's not the translation, some of us translate it to religion. Actually, it's not that. Dhar is the right action, or it is the essence of something, what should be done. It is the conscience, the essence of whatever we are talking about. So, for example, the essence of sugar is sweetness. So that is what is associated. That is the dharma of sugar. It had better be sweet. Otherwise, you're not going to use it, right? You don't have bitter or sugar. So the essence of sugar is sweetness. Essence of fire is heat. Now the Bhagavad Gita is telling us what is my essence. My essence is actually that divinity within me. So it is helping us, taking us to our essence, our dharma. And to reach that God which is within us, we have to do dharmic actions, or we have to function in the world in the righteous manner. So dharma actually means what is correct, what should be done. So that is what Bhagavad Gita tells us, our essence. So as I mentioned, that it is a manual. Bhagavad Gita is a manual. So consider myself a vehicle. I should know how to operate myself. So when you buy a new vehicle, what do? You go through the manual to understand how you open the boot, where is the fuel tank, where is the lever for that, how do you open the boot, what are the features, if it is an automatic vehicle, how do you operate it? Similarly, Bhagavad Gita is telling me about myself. What are my vasanas? What are my tendencies? And how to handle them, how to manage them. So it is like an instruction manual for myself, how to understand the gadget, which is me, how to use it, how to use my equipments, how to troubleshoot myself. So when I'm irritated, jealous, all the negative traits start coming into me, how do I handle them? And how to maintain myself so that I remain poised and calm at as much as possible. While we do all this, it tells us to be more accepting of ourselves. So, not only our gains or positives, but also our negatives and losses, understand them and work on them. So the Bhagavad Gita educates us on how to be human, how to choose rightly, the correct choice, and not to succumb to desire or indulge, and be cheerful while we are doing all this. So, most important message that the Bhagavad Gita brings forth is the technique of right action, which, when we apply to all our endeavors, be it worldly, so if I'm looking for a promotion, if I'm looking for a bigger house, if I'm looking for a happier family, so whatever is my endeavor, if, be it worldly or spiritual, the moment we apply this technique, we will definitely meet with success. So, what it's telling us to be joyful while we face our challenges, take them in our stride, and behave like a sports person who bounces back each time that he loses a match or faces defeat. So he bounces back like a rubber ball and not be a lead ball, which once it falls to the ground can only roll on the ground and never come up. So it is a unique package. Bhagavad Gita is a unique package that offers us the technique of right action for success in life cheerfully. While we are reading the text, we also come across eternal principles, laws, or truths which have been there since creation and will continue to be there. And therefore, this text is very, very relevant for the younger generation, because what the Gita is telling us is not really contained in the texts that they are covering in the school, university, college curriculums. What they learn there is a skill which can be bartered for something in the world only. So that means it helps us earn a living. Sure, it's important to have a comfortable form of existence, have amenities, and so on and so forth. But it is not telling us what is our real purpose in life. And this is what Bhagavad Gita tells us. It tells us what is it that is permanent. You see, when we look around us, everything is changing. The weather changes, the environment changes, we change. So, but still we keep identifying with this I am this, I am that. I am what? I'm changing, right? But the identification is there. That I is the permanent within us. The Bhagavad Gita also tells us what is our purpose in life and what is my true worth. Is it that 1 crore rupee which is coming into my account maybe in a year as salary? Is that my worth? So, what is it that I am worth? What is my value? And how should I live life completely? So, the 18 chapters that we have in the Bhagavad Gita can be broadly broken up into sets of six each. So, the first six actually talk about our constitution, what we are, and how we should act. So that was like the primary school level. So when you do algebra, any mathematic discipline that you follow, you do the basics, the principles of that BODMAS rule, and you do the factorization. So that is what is covered, the basic constitution of ourselves in the first six chapters. Chapters 7 to 12 actually talk about that Paramatman, which we are trying to reach. That is the goal of human existence, actually. So we talk about the nature of that God. And 13 onwards, 13 till the end, we are actually talking about the similarity between the Jivatma between us and that Paramatman. So this is the broad breakup. And of course, the aim of human life is to attain moksha, because that is my essence. I have to go back to my essence. And moksha means I'm free from the cycle of birth and death. That means there is no vasana remaining which forces me to take another birth. And that is it. The text that I'm following is the one by Swami Parthasarthi. This is the Bhagavad Gita. And if any one of you is interested in buying, you can let me know. Now, we come to the next. I will briefly recap the chapters here, what we have done. We are going to start chapter 16. It is a good idea to revise what we have done. So, chapter 1, which we did read on our own, was the Arjun Vishad Yoga, the yoga of Arjun's despondency. Now, one thing I would like to highlight is that each chapter is a yoga. So, Arjun Vishad Yoga, the second is the Sankhya Yoga, and so on and so forth. So, yoga means union with that Paramatman. So, in and through each of these, uh, topics, we are actually attaining for union with God. So, even in Arjun's despondency, Arjun is seeking that union. You see, so that is a very interesting uh, uh, way of titling or heading the chapters, right? So the Arjun Vishad Yoga was the yoga of Arjun's despondency, which covers Arjun's confused condition and how he collapses, and he's just rambling. Chapter 2 was Sankhya Yoga. This was a long chapter, 72 verses, which was Sankhya is knowledge, Yoga, of course, union with the self. So, uniting with that Paramatman through knowledge. So, Arjun keeps rambling till verse 10 of this chapter. From chapter verse 11, the Lord's sermon starts. The Bhagwad Gita technically begins, and the entire knowledge is actually given in this particular chapter. And towards the end of that, Arjun poses a question. So then it is a question answer session that starts on. So the entire knowledge is given in this chapter. And subsequently, the Lord is just clearing Arjun's queries. Now, chapter 3 was Karma Yoga, or union through action, or yoga of action. This told us the key takeaway from this chapter was the technique of right action, which was verses 25 to 35, which is the core of the chapter. Chapter 4 was the Jnana Karma Sannyas Yoga, which is yoga of renunciation of action in wisdom. And here we covered the core of this chapter is the 12 yajanas, which were verses 25 to 30. And then we covered how those yajanas convert to wisdom and how Arjun should take that wisdom. Then we moved on to karma sannyas yoga. So working in that manner or acting in that manner, as explained to us in chapter 4, automatically we renounce action. Now, it doesn't mean that we stop acting. No, it means the action does not affect us. We are not affected by the action. So that is renunciation. That it doesn't influence us. So if we are getting angry, it does not agitate me. I know that I have to have this much of anger to handle the other person, right? It does not agitate me. It's not that I have to take suppressants to calm me down. My BP shoots up. No, nothing of that kind. So I'm able to not get affected by the way I'm acting or how I'm acting because I'm doing the right action. That is what I've learned in the previous chapters. And how this renunciation cools me down, keeps me calm and peaceful so that I'm prepared for meditation and realization, which was chapter 6, the Dhyan Yoga. So that we covered in detail. So this was the first set of 6 verses, which talked essentially about our composition, the way we function or should function, and how should we calm ourselves down so that we are able to concentrate on that supreme being. Now, what is that supreme being? We start off from the next set of 6 verses, Jnana Vigyan Yoga, chapter 7. So, through knowledge and wisdom, we try to attain that union with the self. So, here we were presented with the higher and the lower nature of God and how different ways in which people seek God. And whoever seeks God in whatever way, that is what comes to that person. So, that was Gyan Vigyan Yoga. Chapter 8 was Akshar Brahm Yoga, or the yoga of imperishable Brahman. So, that unimmutable Brahman. And here we essentially covered the path. The key takeaway from this chapter was the path of return and no return. So, how in one case we fall back into the cycle of birth and death, and in the other case we move out with escape velocity and move towards God and reach God. Then we moved on to chapter 9, the Rajvidya Rajaguhya Yoga, or the yoga of royal knowledge and royal secret. So again, almost a build up on the chapter 7, where we were explained as to what we should be aiming for, and we will always attain what we strive for. Chapter 10 was Vibhuti Yoga, Yoga of Supreme Manifestation. And now, how this was that one to many. So, how does that Brahman manifest itself in the world? Chapter 11 was the opposite of that, the Vishwarup Darshan Yoga, or the yoga of the vision of the cosmic form, where all the beings, many to one relationship. So the all of us are seen, all that is moving, non-moving, is within that Paramatman. So this is the cosmic form, uh, where the cosmic form of the Lord is revealed by the Lord to Arjun, who wants to see it, who wants to uh, behold it. And chapter 12 was Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion, one of the shortest chapters of Bhagwad Gita. And basically, it talks about what is bhakti and how to inculcate bhakti in us. Chapter 13 was an important chapter, Kshetragya Vibhag Yoga. Now, see, the tone of the chapters has started changing from chapter 13 onwards. See, till now we were talking about that God. Now we are talking about the relationship between Paramatman and the Jivatma. So, Kshetragya Vibhag Yoga, or the yoga of distinction between the field and the knower of the field. And so we covered a lot of things here. We covered what is matter and what is the knower of the field. We covered the 20 qualities of the Jnani, Prakriti, and Purushaha. So this was a very, very important chapter. And we keep coming back to it, as you have noticed, as we are doing the remaining chapters. Chapter 14 was Gun Traya Vibhag Yoga, or the yoga of distinction of the three gunas. So, here we covered how the beings are generated, the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, and how these gunas bind us to the world and are the cause of the future births. And when we transcend the gunas, we become Brahman, because these are the binds, these are the threads which are binding us. And chapter 15, which we just completed, was titled the Purushottam Yoga, or the Yoga of the Supreme Being. Again, it was a short chapter, 20 verses, and it laid out the blueprint for developing bhakti that we had covered in chapter 12 by understanding that Purushottam. So we covered essentially three things: the nature of Brahman, which was Kshar, the perishable aspect, Akshar, the imperishable, and the Purushottam. So the manifested, the imperishable, and the supreme being. And we, of course, covered how the Brahman is there in the macrocosm, in the microcosm. It is the imperishable, and actually, Brahman is beyond both the macrocosm and the microcosm. So now we are going to begin chapter 16, and the name of the chapter is Devasur Sampad Vibhag Yoga, or the yoga of distinction of divine and demonic natures. Comparatively small chapter, 24 verses. So, how to attain yoga or union with that Brahman? By understanding the difference between the divine and the devil nature of people. So, externally, when you are interacting with people, and also within ourselves, we are also have both the positive and the negatives within us. So the chapter will bring out two kinds of natures that the entire mankind exhibits, and these are divided into the divine, the good, or the Daivik, and the demonic, or the diabolical, or the Asuric. So we will talk about the ways to ways of these people. So we'll talk about the qualities, the divine qualities and the demonic qualities, and the conduct of such kind of people. So externally, as well as when we change our action, we should observe and see that now I'm tending towards the negative side of me. Essentially, the demonic live contrary to the spiritual injunctions, or what is dharmic, what our conscience is telling us to do. And therefore, it leads to agitation, sorrow, and bondage. And of course, the cycles of birth and death. Divine, on the other hand, are able to conquer their desires, control their desires, and they live in peace and bliss and ultimately reach the goal of enlightenment or attain moksha. So, as we will read, you will notice that the connection between or the difference between ethics and the ethical is brought out. So, ethics or spirituality will lead to virtue and self realization, and therefore, the God is telling us to adopt these divine qualities, because the demonic qualities will lead us to our destruction, and those should be avoided because we want to progress on our path of self realization. So, the broad breakup is that the first six verses talk about the qualities, both the divine and the demonic. Then the next set of 7 to 15 verses talk about how the divine and the demonic people act, and the consequences of the demonic conduct are covered in 16 to 21 verses, and the consequences of the divine action is covered in the last set of 22 to 24 verses. So let's start with verse number 1 of this chapter. श्रीभगवानुवाचः अभयं सत्वं संशुद्धिः ज्ञानयोगाव्यवस्थिताः दानं दमश्च यज्ञश्च स्वाध्यायस्तप आर्जवम्. So the verse translates to, the Lord said, fearlessness, complete purity, steadfastness in knowledge and yoga, charity, self restraint and sacrifice, self study, austerity, and uprightness. And then we'll continue to the next verse. But let's take the translation. Shri Bhagwan Vach, the Lord said, Abhayam, Bhay is fear, Abhaya becomes fearless. Sattva Sanshuddhi. So, Shuddhi is purity, Sattva is with the Sattva qualities. So, Sattva Sanshuddhi becomes complete purity or pure Sattva. Gyan Yoga Vyavasthita. So, Gyan is knowledge, Yoga is union, and Vyavasthita means established. So, Gyan Yoga Vyavasthit becomes established or steadfast in knowledge and yoga. Dan is charity. Dam is self restraint. Chayana is and Yagya is sacrifice. Cha and Swadhyay. So, Adhyay is to study. Swadhyay becomes self study, or when we exert ourselves. So, self study. Tap is austerity. Arjvam is uprightness, honesty. So the verse translates to, the Lord said, fearlessness, complete purity, steadfast in knowledge and yoga, charity, self restraint and sacrifice, self study, austerity, and uprightness. So let's chant together. Shri Bhagavanuvachaha Abhayam Satvam Sanshudhi Jnana Yoga Vyavasthita Dhanam damascha yagascha swadhyaya satapa arjavam. So the first three verses are actually covering the divine qualities, or the qualities in divine people, or the divine qualities in me, whichever way you want to look at the verses. But they are talking about the divine qualities, and let's say divine people. Now, why are these being listed out? Is that we focus on them and try to cultivate them as part of our spiritual practice, so that we are able to elevate ourselves and propel ourselves towards that supreme goal, or to try and propel ourselves to attain that escape velocity, so that we are able to get out of the gravitation of the worldly attractions and enchantments, and actually head towards God. So these qualities are the foundation for our process of self realization. Or, in other words, they help us to purify our mind so that we become pure and we are not influenced by what is happening around us. And when we are able to command these qualities, we will automatically attain God. And without perfect command over these qualities, we cannot attain God. It's either or. It's very simple. It's mutually exclusive occurrence. If for those of you who've done mathematics, either this happens or that happens. Both cannot happen. It's just like when the mirror is pure, the reflection is clear. If it is dusty, even if there is a small speck, the reflection is not clear. So, similarly, when the mind is clear, we can identify completely with Paramatman. The moment there is any impurity, the image becomes blurred. We cannot see that Paramatman. And okay, we will start. The first three verses are actually talking about the 26 qualities. We will start reading, but also you may like to go back to the chapters of the Bhakti Yoga, chapter 12. I think the verses were 8 to 12, where we had covered the qualities of a bhakta. And yeah, so we had covered 35 qualities, and these were verses 13 to 20 of chapter 12. And then we had covered 20 qualities of the Jnani in chapter 13. And these were verses 8 to 12. So you might like to go through them, because after all, it's the same thing, maybe presented in different manners. Now we will take up each one of these qualities, spend some time to understand them. See, I could have just read them out. Yeah, I mean, after all, when we talk of, for example, the first thing, abhayam, fearless. So it's fine, you understand, but we should understand that how does the quality arise? Where is the root of this quality? So that's why I will take some time and we will cover each one of them. So the first quality that is listed is abhayam, or fearless. Now, when are you fearless? When you know that there is nothing which is going against you. There's no one, everyone is working towards you, towards your, betterment. So the quality arises from that oneness principle that we have been talking continuously through the various chapters, that when we become one with the creation, one with our surroundings, one with our locality, or when we get beyond the world of name and form, the differences, or beyond the world of plurality, we become, we become one and live in harmony with the creation. Or when we merge ourselves completely with everything around us, there is no competition now. When I treat myself at par with my neighbor, there is no competition. When I don't, then I will not like a new car standing in his driveway. I immediately would want, the competition starts, and I become agitated. So if I treat it, so oneness expresses itself how? I become happy, I'll go and congratulate. I said, wow, good. And even I want to take a ride in the car. That's the oneness principle. The opposite is what I just mentioned before that. Also, whenever we want preferential treatment, fear will follow. So when I am, saying, okay, I want the VIP passes to something or whatever, it is a preferential treatment that we are looking for. Definitely, fear is there within us. Now, the root of fear is also ignorance and darkness. In the divine state, when we have knowledge, so ignorance is removed, and from that knowledge, we are illuminated. So there is no darkness. We automatically become fearless. So, with knowledge which illumines us, fear is removed and we become fearless or abhayam. Sattvam Sanshuddhi, that's the next word that's used, is completely pure. And I'm just building the link here. Shuchi was used for both Bhakta and Jnani in chapter 12 and 13. You may like to go through those verses that I mentioned. Now, when we talk of purity or complete, so before we come to complete purity, let's talk of purity. We understand purity and impurity at the physical level. We understand that very well. So if we have not had a bath, we would like to go and have a bath. If we see dust in our place or dirt in our place, we automatically go and address it, handle it. So we keep ourselves, our homes, and our environment clean to a large extent. But what we don't understand is that physical purity is one part. What is more concern is the mental impurity that we have. And we are not very careful here because it's something which is not visible to us. It's not visible to our senses. So purity of mind is what is being referred to here is the state of inner cleanliness. That means the negative thoughts don't come to us. So so we are not jealous, we are not destructive in our behavior because at the mental and the intellectual level, the desires is what is creating the impurity in us, and they are generating these thoughts because mind is emoting and the intellect is reasoning. So the mind intellect generate and harbor thoughts, sentiments, feelings, emotions, etc. Now this quality is also directly building on the abhayam or the fearlessness. If we are not afraid of things, why would I be worried about what is happening? I will not expect everyone to be picking my pocket. See, why we don't like to go out in crowds is because people will hassle me. We are not identifying with them for whatever reason. Okay. So, if we are one with the crowd, we will understand that since no one is going to harm me, what do they have to gain? We will behave in a completely different manner. So, the purity of mind is extremely important and arises from the previous quality. And actually, if we look at it, all these qualities are linked. So, when we have wholesome, positive, ethical, and uplifting thoughts, the mind is pure. And this is what is the sattva in us, which the verse is referring to, and the sattva gun that we had covered in chapter 14. When our thoughts are unethical and degrading, the mind starts becoming impure. Now, normally, when we are attached to objects, the ignorance contaminates our mind. And the pure emotions like love becomes obsessive attachment or even attachment. So love becomes obsession, and these impure emotions. Now love, which is a positive emotion, starts agitating us. So this is how the transformation takes place. And with these impurities, the reality within us is obscured. It starts getting covered. So a divine person with attachment only to God remains pure and uh, mentally healthy. Then Gyan Yoga Vyavasthita is steadfast in in knowledge and yoga, which we have been reading again and again. That knowledge is required to understand the goal, and yoga is required to be always seeking that goal. So we have the knowledgeable people, the seekers have a clear vision of the goal, and they have the earnestness to attain that goal. So they put all their efforts in the union or yoga through the various practices of the karma yoga at the level of the body, bhakti yoga at the level of the mind, and jnana yoga at the level of the intellect, which help us to purify our mind and propel us towards God. And then we come to the next quality, danam or dan, charity. So giving, sharing, serving. Now, see, the point here is that the attitude is more important. It's not that someone has given 1 crore rupees as charity. So in US you have this taxation which is linked to your inheritance and so on and so forth. So you keep donating. But you're donating money because you don't want to come under the tax problem, right? So let's be very clear why we are doing the charity. Charity is when we actually do it as charity, when I don't want to go around saying, telling the world that, oh, I donated so many billion dollars or so many crores of rupees to this fund and that person. So that is one. The second thing is that so this is the trueness of the charity, and we should be doing. The second thing is intelligent charity to the right person. So if I am giving books to someone who is illiterate, I think it's stupid of me actually to be doing that kind of charity. So the charity has to be intelligent charity, and always we should not do it with the feeling of superiority, but we should be doing it with a sense of gratefulness towards the Lord for giving us that opportunity to help the person in front of us. So, and also we covered this bit, I think, in the Yajna chapters, that material charity, which is done for the welfare of the body, helps others temporarily. So it is one form of charity. As compared to that, the mental and the intellectual charity that we give to others helps in eliminating suffering and the cause of suffering. So that is a higher charity. So, mental and intellectual charity is considered superior to the material charity. So that this we had covered in the chapter 4. I think we had gone in detail in this. Now, dam is the next one, which is control of senses. So the nature of the mind is to chatter, wander, and go after the objects of the world. And with the objects of the world, our peace of mind starts going and our faculties start going. It's called charna, as the cow गाय चरती है वैसे ही हमारे सेंसेस भी चरना शुरू कर देते हैं in the world instead of going inwards. So this is the problem. And the senses, not only do they take us out into the world, but we want instant gratification. So, fast food, 2-minute noodles. And as we are so called developing, we want more and more of these instant gratifications. Now, the point is that actually the mind must come under the aegis of our intellect. The intellect must harness the mind to ensure that the mind is channelized and moves in the right direction, which is that of the ultimate goal. And here, if I would like to draw your attention to the chariot of Arjun, I mean, with Lord Krishna. So there are 5 horses and the reins, right? So the 5 horses represent our senses, and those should be reined in. And also, we must understand, while we are talking of control of senses, we must understand the difference between self denial and self restraint. So, self denial is unintelligent, where I'm suppressing myself, and then one day the whole set of vasanas and the desires will just become a bomb, and burst from us. Whereas self restraint is an intelligent control of desires. So the senses and the sense objects must be mastered and conquered. We should be riding them and not they us. Then we come to yajna, the sacrifice, where we do our obligatory duties, whether or not they are enjoyable. So we are not working at the level of the mind. See, likes and dislikes are at the level of the mind. So you may have to go for some function, or you may have to attend a meeting. It is required that you do that. It may not be enjoyable, but you have to do it. And now this sacrifice is also using the previous qualities that we have covered. Sacrifice is when we perform dhanam, charity, obligatory duty, and even charity, where we help others with control of senses and self restraint, which is dhamma, which we just did. Right? So, this is sacrifice is always towards a higher goal, and you can have a worldly goal. So, it's in the relative realm, or you can have the goal for attaining the self, which is the highest goal. Then we come to swadhyay, which is the study, self study of scriptures. So, imbibing knowledge of the self, of course, is the duty and responsibility of every human being. And because our goal is to reach that Brahman. Now, self study is important because we internalize and reflect upon what we have read. So, when you are hearing or attending a session, it's a different thing. But when you study the same scripture and reflect upon what is being said and also think of what you heard, it's a completely different interpretation and understanding of the same text. And here I would say that we realized this last in our last session when we picked out the most important verse of chapter 15, the Purushottam Yoga, and we also expressed ourselves as to why we considered that particular verse most important. It was the level of that session was amazing. And that was because we had all read the scripture by ourselves, whatever that portion of the scripture by ourselves. So, see how the same satsang transformed in itself in the last session. Then we come to tapaha, which is austerity. So, as we just discussed, the nature of the mind and the body is that it's insatiable. The more you feed it, the more it wants. So we have to control and restrain them so that they become disciplined. So if I'm prone to sleeping late, so one day I can't get up at 6:30, next day I'm not able to get up at 7 o'clock. Then it becomes 7:30 very fast, in 24 hours. So we have to become disciplined. So austerity is self-imposed discipline. It is a capacity to say no to that sleep, in my case, to anything which is tempting you in whatever, whoever, whichever case. So it is for purifying the body, mind, and the intellect. And also while we are conducting ourselves in the world and performing our duties, so that we avoid dissipation of energies and actually do activities which release more energies. So, channelizing all these energies towards attainment of our goal, whatever it is, worldly goal or God realization, whichever goal we are working towards. Arjavam is simplicity or uprightness. Now, the only test of this is when we are true to ourselves, when we are doing all actions my conscience is telling me to do. And you'll find that even when we are jumping that queue that we were talking about some time back, our conscience is telling us not to do it. But my desire for being early That is what is catching up. So the moment we go against our conscience, that is the time we are committing a sin, when we are doing what we ought not to do. So this is following our conscience, uh, and by conviction, because our convictions are also built upon our conscience and what we imbibe. So if we work on those, we will lead an upright, simple, and truthful lives. So we covered 9 qualities, and I've already overshot the time. So I think we will end here today, and we will take up verse 2 next time. If